To our incredible choice listeners, as we are all aware, this has been an interesting year with a lot of changes. As we move into the season of caring and giving, I want to personally say thank you for being with KTSU throughout the year. It is my belief we are stronger together, and that has been proven. As we prepare for an outstanding new year, on behalf of the entire staff and volunteers at KTSU, we wish you and yours a very happy holiday season and looking forward to a healthy and prosperous new year. I'm Ernest Walker, General Manager of The Choice 90.9 KTSU, your community station. Merry Christmas, Feliz Navidad, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and get ready for an impactful 2021.
Celebrating the music that celebrates us.
Y'all showing out today.
From jazz to neo soul. Blues.
Now this is what I'm talking about.
Hip-hop.
That's my jam.
Gospel.
This is how we do.
We truly are your community station, serving your entire family, our entire community. The Choice. 90.9 KTSU Houston.
The views or opinions expressed on the following program do not necessarily represent the views or opinions of the management and staff of KTSU FM, nor Texas Southern University Administration and the Board of Regents.
Welcome to Real World, Real Talk with Dr.D.Z.Cofield. The show represents captivating conversations and insightful information on the best you can possibly be. And now, your host for Real World, Real Talk, Dr. D.Z.Cofield.
What's going on, Houston? Welcome to a live edition of Real World, Real Talk. I'm your host, Dr. D.Z.Cofield, and you're listening to your member-supported public radio station, your number one source for jazz and more. KTSU 90.9 on the FM dial and KTSUradio.com and on all digital platforms as well. I want to say happy holidays to all of you who are listening. Typically, when we hit December the 1st, we are leaning into the holiday season. And typically there are Christmas parties and things like that and gatherings that kind of get you going. But we know because of COVID-19, those kinds of gatherings and parties are now limited. And so you may not be quite in the mood yet, but I'm hoping you do that. Let me also say, for those of you who'd like to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and IG. Instagram at DZ.Cofield. And I'm doing a series of devotionals to get you in the Christmas mood, 7 o'clock each morning, and they can be replayed as you desire throughout the day. We started on December the 1st. We'll go all the way through December the 25th. One of the things that really inspired this for me was a news story where a gentleman was out with his family shopping for live trees. And I don't know if you saw the reports, but the purchasing of live trees are going at a record pace. They're not only going at a record pace in terms of trees being sold, but also they're being sold earlier in the year. And so they asked the family who was out shopping for a Christmas tree, why were they out so early shopping this year? And the gentleman said, with everything going on, it was important for him to start celebrating Christmas earlier rather than later so they could celebrate it longer rather than shorter. Now, I understood that because I know for me, many times you're so busy ripping and running around that you don't really start shutting things down and shutting things off until you get around the 22nd or so, 23rd. And then maybe you get a day or two, depending on how much shopping you have to do, how many people are coming over, how much food you have to prepare, and all of those things. And so this year, this family felt it was really important to lean into the holiday season as early as possible. All of us are familiar with that wonderful Christmas song, that it's the most wonderful time of the year. And so it's really important for many families, and maybe for you as well, to start celebrating as soon as possible. So we're thankful for that celebration, and we want to do our part to help you along the way. What's going on in the news today? Well, man, there's a lot of stuff going on. First of all, Vice President Biden, President-elect Biden, is coming under a lot of criticism from Black ministers and Black politicians, activists, who are basically criticizing him for the lack of diversity in his cabinet appointments. Now, when you talk about a lack of diversity, there have been a number of women who have been named, a number of Latinos who have been named. Black woman here or there has been named, but there really haven't been any African-American men that have been named. And there are those who are in his cabinet who are saying, just be patient. President-elect Biden has only announced 8 of his 23 cabinet picks, but there are those, including South Carolina Congressman Jim Clyburn, who was believed by many to be the one who got Vice President then Biden over the hump in the South Carolina primary, who has said, we haven't seen enough yet. And he has expressed disappointment that only one Black person has been named to a cabinet post so far. And they're basically putting the pressure on him. And they want major cabinet positions held by African-American people. So you hear him talking about, for example, Attorney General. You hear them talking about some other cabinet positions, Secretary of State, just naming, some of those major positions of importance and influence. So we'll see what happens. But again, I don't know where you fall on that, if you think he is doing enough already or if he should be doing more, but that is in the news. COVID-19, we have 1.33 million cases in the state of Texas, 23,000 plus deaths. In the United States, 14.8 million cases, 282,000 deaths. And in Harris County, 197,000 cases and 3,000 plus deaths. I think what we're missing is the fact that death should not be the only metrics that we use to determine whether or not people are suffering from this virus, because there are a lot of people who are suffering, and the numbers are still coming in. People who have been recovering slowly, people who may not have died, but people who are having respiratory problems, people who are having brain fog and the like, people who may be alive, but because of the time that they had to spend on ventilators and comas, etc., have been relegated to having to learn how to walk again. We're not talking about those numbers. We're not talking about that impact of COVID-19. And there are those who are now wondering, with these vaccines coming off the assembly line, how effective are they going to be? And part of the effectiveness is going to be tied to how many people take the vaccines, right? Because there are a number of people who are saying, including some in the medical community, who have said, they're not anxious to jump out there and be the first ones to take it. Everybody's voting and saying, hey, the first people who have access to the vaccine are medical professionals and first responders, and then the elderly, the highly vulnerable. But there are those in the medical community who have gone on record and saying, they're not really sure about that. I talked to somebody on yesterday who said, people have a choice whether they take the flu vaccine or not. But people in the health profession, many of them, it is an obligation. They have to. It's a requirement. They have to take the flu shot. It's not quite there yet with the COVID-19 vaccine, but they're anticipating down the road in the not too distant future, it will be required for health professionals and those on the front line to take the COVID-19 vaccine. And then the question is, which vaccine are you going to take? You know, which one will be available and how many shots do you need to take and all of those things. So they're still working through those logistics, but it seems pretty clear that the average person will not get an opportunity to take that vaccine until early in the second quarter of next year. So we're talking about April, May, June. You won't get a chance to take it until then. And that's best case scenario. So my personal thought is it'll probably be the third or fourth quarter. You know, if Murphy's Law is true and whatever can go wrong will go wrong, I'm sure that there'll be some setbacks. There'll be some people who have adverse reactions to it. They'll pull it back and do some more testing. And so it's going to be a minute before everybody gets there. And then we have another problem. And I'd love to hear your opinion on this, because here's my opinion. If people think it's a hoax and they don't want to wear a mask, they sure not going to get in line to take a test or to get a vaccine, right? I mean, if you think it's a hoax and you think this is just a ploy of the government, then why would you take a vaccine? I mean, you won't do something as simple as wear a mask. And so, you know, there's a whole lot going on with that. And man, it's going to be tough. A high school in Texas, I don't know if you saw this story, opened a grocery store for struggling families where good deeds are accepted as payment. A school in small town, Texas, Sanger, Texas, has ignited hope across the community by opening a student-led grocery store to support families in need. Linda Tutt High School launched the grocery store in November so students could purchase necessities, including toilet paper, meat, and basic food items. They pay for their purchases by earning points from good deeds. Here's what the principal had to say, Anthony Love. In our school district, there's roughly 2,750 students enrolled, and throughout the district, 43% of these students are considered economically disadvantaged. About 3.6% of our students are considered homeless. We thought it was important to support them and their families and make sure they had food on the table. The high school has partnered with First Refuge Ministries, Texas Health Resources, and the grocery store chain Albertsons to open the store, which is completely run by students who manage the inventory, stock the shelves, and help other students find and bag the products they need. Preston Westbrook, a junior at the high school, serves as one of the store managers. I love this school, he said. I help out in everything we do, and I'm a helper. It's just what I do. I'm here to make sure students get what they need. The store helped bring family spirits up during the pandemic, especially for people who lost family members. The students who come in are just so happy. They always have a smile on their face. Students in the entire district, in North Dallas in particular, this town, Sanger, is about 47 miles south of Dallas. And their families can buy whatever they need using a number of points, which initially is set depending on the size of their family. I think that's a powerful story, tremendous to teach young people that kind of responsibility, not just for themselves, but for their families as well. As we know, our children are raised with a spirit of self-centeredness, and it's not their fault. I think all children are raised that way. They start off in the crib crying to get attention, and some of them have never learned, and as adults they're still crying to get attention. They have to be taught to share and taught generosity and all of those principles. And so I think that's a tremendous story. It's good stuff that we need to be aware of. Had a tragedy happen in Houston, and I don't know how many of you heard this story. A man experiencing mental issues dies in police custody after he tripped and fell into a drainage ditch. And they're saying that he fell into this ditch on his own. Officers responded to a criminal mischief call in a residential area composed of gated communities on the northwest side of town. And they arrested this gentleman, a Hispanic man in his 50s. He was in the midst of a mental episode. The man would not comply with police commands. And they're claiming he tripped and fell into a drainage ditch by himself. He got up from the drainage ditch. Officers said they took him into custody. And the man, who has not been identified, suffered cuts and bruises from the fall. A spokesman said that the injuries, they believe, came possibly from the drainage when he fell down or from earlier in the day. But when they arrived, he was having a mental episode. They don't know if alcohol or drugs played a role in it. I don't know. It's kind of interesting, right? The gentleman is being taken into custody, and he trips and falls into this drainage ditch and dies. Some might say, well, they didn't, at least they didn't shoot him, right? Which has been the case, not in Houston, as much as it has been around the country. We've seen episodes of people having mental episodes and being tased and or shot and killed by police officers. But it's a tragedy. And so we certainly want to send out our well wishes to that family. I don't know if you saw the attorney for President Trump, his personal attorney, one of them, Rudy Giuliani, was admitted to the hospital. He has tested positive for COVID-19. And they're saying now that Giuliani has potentially exposed hundreds of people to the virus. If you don't know who Rudy Giuliani is, you might have seen him, former mayor of New York City. And he was a gentleman that was arguing and sweating profusely as he was arguing the case for the president about this election being fraudulent, widespread fraud, and his hair dye was running down the side of his face. You probably saw the picture of that. And he has been a butt of many jokes around that. Well, he has tested positive for COVID. This is interesting because, we've seen the president test positive for COVID, his wife, his youngest son test positive for COVID. Now, several of his older children have tested positive for COVID, and people who have gone to what have been deemed super spreader events have also tested positive for COVID. He was admitted to Georgetown University Hospital today. And so, I listen, y'all pray for me, okay? Because I don't wish anything bad on anybody. I'm certainly not sitting there going, man, I hope the president and everybody in there gets it. But, man, karma is something else, y'all. I mean, because, these are folk who were like, no, it's not that serious. No, you don't need to wear a mask. You don't need to do this. You don't need to do that. And it's amazing now to see many of these people contracting COVID who have been staunch supporters of the president. Speaking of supporters of the president, boy, as Travis, one of my friends, says, you're only as good as your last best deed. Man, did you hear what the president said about the governor of Georgia? Man, he is blasting this dude. He's like, man, you need to declare this election fraudulent and give me the election. And he is saying this to basically every Republican governor of a state he has lost, who has now certified the election for President-elect Joe Biden. Georgia has gone back through, counted by hand one time, counted again, and Joe Biden has won. Every court case has been thrown out. and arguments are falling on deaf ears. And the president is still claiming it's fraud, still claiming he won, and that may be what he wishes, but the facts do not bear that out. And of course, when these Republican lawmakers and government officials are not supporting him, it has become a problem. So we will see. 713-313-4354 is the number that you can call. 713-313-4354 is the number that you can call. It's going to be interesting to see what happens as we move into the first of the year. One of the things I would love to hear your opinion about is what do you think will be the measuring rod or standard for success for President-elect Biden as he comes into an office? In other words, the first 100 days he's in office, what can he do to be deemed successful? Now, I do think there a lot depends upon whether or not the Democrats win the Senate or not. If the Democrats win the Senate, and there's a debate going on, I believe it's tonight in the state of Georgia, and if between two of the candidates, Raphael Warnock, Dr. Raphael Warnock, who's the pastor of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, is in a runoff for one of those U.S. Senate seats in the state of Georgia. It's going to be interesting to see. I will tell you this, based on past experience and based on the immediate work of the Republicans, if the Democrats are able to win the Senate, along with holding on to the House, I think you are going to see stuff pushed through like you have never seen it before. The last time that happened was when President Obama went in 2008 and the Democrats held the House and the Senate. And I think a mistake that the president made was he was so busy trying to build consensus with Republicans that he would not push legislation through, which then put it upon him to use the power of the executive branch and issue a lot of executive orders, many of which President Trump undid once he got into office. And people like Nancy Pelosi, who was a leader in the Democratic Party then in the House, they were frustrated. They were frustrated with the President Obama, because they were like, hey, man, we got the numbers. Let's do this thing. Let's make it happen. And we have seen over the last 4 years an intentional move to undo so much of what was done. So much so that much of what was promised could never be delivered, even when the president had a majority in the House and the Senate. And that happens when you don't get stuff done or you do the wrong things. That first midterm election, in essence, becomes an evaluation, a judgment on how good your presidency is. And when President Obama lost that majority in the House and the Senate, and then lost the Senate, it was an uphill battle from there. And he spent, basically 6 years fighting uphill trying to get things done. And he would never put the Republicans on blast. He would never talk bad about them. He would never say they're blocking legislation. They have, bills that have been passed in the House that just need to be passed by the Senate so they can be signed into law by me. He would never put them on blast. He would never list the things that they had not done. We've seen over the last 4 years exactly the opposite take place. And so it's going to be interesting to see if Joe Biden has the same kind of philosophy that President Obama had, or if he is going to fight. And I'd like to know what your thoughts are about that. Do you think he should fight? Do you think he should be the nice guy, mild-mannered guy, and see if we can all just get along? California's bonfire has burned more than 7,000 acres and more fire warnings are ahead. Really tough, man, really sad out there. You're thinking about people who are dealing with so many other things like COVID-19, like social injustice, like the economic crisis. And now you're worrying about your home catching on fire and lives being lost. And we're seeing people who are going back to their homes or to their neighborhoods and finding nothing but ashes. Tremendously hard for families who are going through that as well. Give me a call, 713-313-4354, 713-313-4354. President Biden's popular vote margin over President Trump now tops 7 million. 7 million. The only problem I have with talking about that, to be perfectly honest with you, is it really doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. He won the electoral college votes. That's what really matters, right? Because when you say, well, we won the popular vote, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by 3 million votes. Okay, but it doesn't matter. You've got to win the electoral votes. And President Trump did that. All right, let's go to our phone line. Welcome to Real World, Real Talk. You're on the air. What's on your mind? Hey, Miss Jenny, what's going on? Well, so let me start with Sanger. I'm not sure what the makeup of that school district's population is, or that high school specifically, what the makeup of it is. But I do think it's a tremendous gesture and a tremendous partnership, and it gives those young people an opportunity to learn responsibility, to take responsibility. And you know what I thought about, Dr. Bennett, when I heard about this story, I was thinking, how brutal and how mean kids can be at times, and the kind of ridicule that kids have faced now through the years. I mean, every generation, teased about what you wear, what you look like, poverty, etc. And the pandemic and the economic crisis has been a great equalizer. And for some people who have said, all these people need to do is get up and get a job, they are now in the same position that other people have been in for years, in terms of an economic crisis, not being able to get jobs, etc. And so I really applaud this school district and this high school in particular for taking this initiative. And I need to find out who the principal is, Anthony Love, and what they're doing there. But I thought the story was absolutely tremendous. In terms of President-elect Biden, I agree with you. I think he needs to go in and fight. I think what we have seen glimpses of in the past, and we have now seen it just forthright and out in the public, is the unreasonableness and the hypocrisy of many Republicans. And I'm not, and I want everybody to hear me, hypocrisy crosses the lines. It shows up on the blue side and on the red side as well. But the hypocrisy that we have seen over and over again, for people to get under the Trump umbrella and to be able to stand under that umbrella with people that they say they don't really agree with. Like it's really hard, when you say I'm a good person and whatever, and then I'm standing next to racists and supremacists and the like, and I'm standing next to people who take advantage of other people in situations. It's just really hard to talk about how great a person you are when this is a person that you identify with, and they do it around primarily one singular issue that they have really misdefined and misrepresented. And that's this issue of pro-life, because the Republican Party is really not pro-life. They're really just pro-birth, and they're really pro-birth for a certain number of people, but they're not pro-life because once I'm born, they don't care anything about me, especially if I'm a person of color. And that's been displayed over and over again in terms of policies, and whether those are policies locally or statewide or nationally. Those policies, fighting for insurance coverage for children, and the CHIP program here in the state of Texas, the failure to expand Medicaid coverage here in the state of Texas, even though our federal taxes pay for that expansion. So to have 2.5 million people who are underinsured or uninsured in the state of Texas, under the guise of, because we don't want to identify with Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, it's just hypocrisy. And so, I don't know, but we'll see. Did you think of the third thing yet? Sure. Sure. No, it is. It is. Absolutely. I think it's a tragedy. And I think, what has happened in our country, and this is, I think we have seen without question some of the best marketing and negative propaganda in this country that we've ever seen, which is why people who support the Affordable Care Act will turn around and say, but they don't believe in Obamacare, because they don't realize they're both the same. Right. So, right. And so, but again, that's the marketing ploy, to label people who believe that everyone should have health care as socialists, and clearly people who hear that term and people who use that term don't understand what a socialist really is. They don't really understand what socialism is. All they know is, oh, we live in a democracy and we're democratic, and anything other than a democracy is wrong. And so if you don't support, for example, the right-wing agenda, now you are being labeled a Marxist, and you hear people using terms like cultural Marxism. And it's like, man, have you ever read Karl Marx? Like, do you even know who Karl Marx is? But to try to use that and blanket people who disagree with you, to call them something that is in essence so negative and is so what's the word? It's such a pejorative term that, you know, now, oh, wait a minute, you're a cultural Marxist, you know, and it's like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Because I don't agree with you. I'm a Marxist now. I'm still not. I'm not a Democrat now. I'm a Marxist. I don't believe in democracy. So it's all of those things. But Dr. Bennett, thank you for calling. I appreciate it. Okay. All right. I appreciate it. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you. So the Georgia Senate candidates are facing off in a debate. The candidates are about to have a runoff debate. Told you Dr. Warnock and Kelly Loeffler are battling over pandemic relief. She was without question a supporter of President Trump. This is going to be a watershed moment. We think it was a watershed moment in the election of President-elect Biden, but this is going to be a watershed moment because now all eyes are on Georgia. President Trump has said he is going to go down and he is going to be candidating. President Obama, President-elect Biden have said they're going to be going into Georgia campaigning on behalf of the Democratic candidates. And Stacey Abrams, who is credited with galvanizing voters in Georgia, is working hard along with her team to get voters out. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Let's go to our next phone call. Welcome to Real World, Real Talk. You're on the air. I'm great. How are you?
Of the vote divided. I think it's Nebraska. I know it's Nebraska and one other state that does a proportion. So the thing about the election is with the gerrymandering and all of these drawing of the districts on a local level. You know, it's a comprehensive type of gamesmanship that takes place every 10 years, especially with the census.
Correct.
And so the ideology of the country, if you look at the country, as far as poverty, the poverty rate, you know, no one has had the experience of the African American in America and in the world, basically. But you have the poor whites, mostly in Appalachia, okay? And that's who Donald Trump basically had as his base, not the Republican Party. It was basically those who felt like they're marginalized and have been marginalized and left out with the closure. That's why he's talking about he bringing coal back. That was the number one employer of people living in Appalachia, working class Caucasian people. And so when we look at these demographics, they utilize that in understanding how to divide, how to manipulate the electoral college. In my opinion, it's if you have low voter turnout, then that plays into the hand of a more potent voting pool for those who have voted, for those in charge of the electoral college vote, to have a more potent output. Would you think? If only 10% of people voting and we turn out ours more than yours, then our vote becomes more potent. The same argument that happens when people say the electoral college has more political weight because it's based on each state and each district within that state. So that makes it more powerful than the popular vote. Does that make sense to you? Or
Yeah.
am I making sense?
No, I understand what you're saying. And I think, you know, what's interesting is, when you go back to just look at the history of the election, you know, the Electoral College was always intended to keep rich white landowners in office. I mean, that's what it was designed to do. I mean, it was never intended to take into account the popular vote. I mean, that's why, and to make every state come into play so that you would never get, you know, those states that were most populated, you know, to be able to carry the election. In terms of the coal and Appalachia and whatnot, you know, I spent some years in West Virginia, and, you know, I agree with you. I think what's interesting is, you know, when the president did a tremendous job of making people feel good about getting their pockets picked, you know, and you know, because, you know, when you look at, for example, the use of coal, there was no major increase in the use of coal or the purchase of coal or coal as a fuel in this country. It hasn't happened, and it's not going to happen. And, you know, when you have people, for example, who were using fear and scare tactics in the state of Texas, talking about, you know, if you elect Biden, you know, it's going to destroy, you know, the oil industry in Texas. He's going to be about, you know, all of these clean energies and whatnot. There are more people employed in the state of Texas in clean energy right now than in the oil industry. It's a fact. And so, you know, a lot of times, you know, again, fear is used and ideas are thrown out there that are unsubstantiated, and people just buy into it. You know, I just think, D, let me ask you a question. What does President Biden have to do in his first 100 days to say to you he's going to do a great job, or this is going to be a successful presidency?
Well, I want to do an addendum to what your statement was. Like they do in politics, is never get through a clean bill. They got to have some addendums and some amendments to it.
All right.
The rich white folks want to be white at the expense of an uninformed citizenry.
Sure.
That's how they're able to pull off the heist.
Sure, absolutely.
And you participate in your heist. If I'm uninformed, because see, poor white people thought that they was always insulated against the atrocities of Black communities and the indigenous people community because they was white.
Right. Right.
So, but what do the president-elect has to do, what I would like to see him do, it's been a lot of hard-fought victories along these years that I've been alive. I'd just like to see him start off disenforcing the laws that are already on the books. Community Reinvestment Act, all right? Because Donald Trump had just got his fourth member of the Federal Reserve on the board of the Federal Reserve. So that's 3 Supreme Court judges and 200 or so federal judges and 4 out of 7 members of the Federal Reserve Board, which is a part of the 3-pronged approach to the Community Reinvestment Act, along with the FDIC and the Office of Currency. They are in charge of carrying out the Community Reinvestment Act, which has been neglected over the last few decades since it was implemented in the 70s. If he gets the people to implement some of the things that are already in law and make sure they've been implemented properly, and then have stuff like some police reform in the sense of better qualified candidates for police officers, background checks on guns. Some of those things, I think he's going to have to fight the battles that he's been proclaiming and go for the low-hanging fruit and go for those things that are already on the books that can help the economy and redirect some of these programs to needy communities that is already been pummeled by this virus, and millions of people losing their jobs, getting the foreclosures and evictions. And so I just think some of the laws that's already on the books should be looked at, and you don't have to fight that battle again. Just implement it and enforce those rules. That's why I see the first 100 days as far as the new administration.
Well, I think you make a great point because you're absolutely right. There are laws on the books already that have not been enforced. There are laws that have not been given the teeth that they need, and so they have no bite. And so I think you raise an interesting point and perspective in that, you know, we can talk all we want and you can pass as many laws as you want, but if you don't make sure those laws get implemented and they're practiced and you don't hold people accountable, then it really doesn't matter. Let me take another caller. Thank you, D, for calling, man. I appreciate you, brother. Welcome to Real World, Real Talk. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon. Good evening. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm fine. I would like to, first 100 days, Joe Biden, I would like for him to roll back all of the signing statements that Donald Trump implemented. I would like for him to revisit all of his federal judgeship appointments and on a constitutional basis, add a couple people to the Supreme Court. These are big battles. We know who his constituency is. I think Biden needs to focus on who his real constituency is. And I think that he should utilize some of the great Black male minds, you know, for the economy, for education. We need to get Betsy DeVos out of there. She is not an educator. She's just a super rich heiress. She's just an appointee. Trump's buddies. It's all cronyism and crony capitalism. And I believe that we should press him and those others elected around him to really push for a more egalitarian agenda that really incorporates the bright Black male minds, because it appears that he hadn't really noticed us very much. And I believe that that would be a great representation for young Black males. So education, economic brain power, roll back all of Trump's signing statements.
You talking about his executive orders?
Yes, sir. Oh my gosh. And the previous caller really laid it out so eloquently and accurately. Trump has been very busy behind the scenes. And I believe Biden should get busy in those very areas where Trump has been busy. And let's retract and revisit and reorient and modify all of those things, because Trump and his cartel of East Coast grifters have rigged it for raw power for the next 50 years. And I believe he should have a spine about investigating Trump's family and friends. You know, I understand that politics is about the art of compromise. Activism is about making right those things that are wrong.
Yeah.
So I wish he would go into attack mode. I'll take my comments off there, sir.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, man. You know, I think it's interesting. I didn't even mention this earlier. I'll tell you the other thing that's fascinating to me. This preemptive pardoning that the president is talking about doing. I mean, you know, he's going to start pardoning a whole lot of people. But to pardon his family members and to pardon himself. Now, again, as the president, he can only pardon himself for federal crimes, right? He can't pardon himself for state or local crimes. But to pardon himself for federal crimes preemptively before they've even been charged with any offenses is very interesting. And we'll talk about that coming up in some coming shows. All right. Let's go to our phone lines. Welcome to Real World, Real Talk. What's on your mind?
Yeah, this is Roberto.
Hey, Roberto, what's going on, brother?
Hi. I'm holding my breath as to what he's going to do until January 20th. I mean, he is still president. But I need to say this because I haven't heard it said at all anywhere. Biden's campaign was DOA, dead on arrival. What resurrected it? The African American people, South Carolina. When he won that primary, his race took off. He owes African American people big time. I think part of the payback was picking Harris as vice president. She's an outstanding candidate for vice president. She'd be great. But the other thing is this: if we're going to be wasting time trying to get the Republicans to work with Democrats, it's a waste of time. Trump got 74 million votes. How he got 74 million, I don't know. But he's going to use that to run again. Because all he has to do is ask the other Republicans, can you collect 74 million? So, and if I hope he loses his campaign in Georgia, and they do come up with 2 Democrats, that'd be fantastic. But I don't know about that rate, but it is crucial.
Yeah.
So, but get back to what should Biden do his first 100 days. Biden has the answer already. He's already given it to us. And I agree with him. And that is, we've got to deal with coronavirus, number one. Because after that has been dealt with, we'll see how much damage there is to the economy. Because that's the strong suit for the Republicans, the economy. Because it is a fact that the economy was doing well until the coronavirus hit us.
So Roberto, let me ask you a question, because one of the challenges that I thought Vice President Biden had in running, and I think he did a great job, and I think the president made a critical strategical mistake in not simply apologizing and leaning into COVID-19 and really taking it on, because by all accounts, with the economy growing as it was, and I'm saying by all accounts, his being reelected, I think, would have been a shoo-in. If you took COVID-19 off the table, I don't know if people would have, those who voted against him, the 45% of white women that voted against him, the even smaller number of white men that voted against him, I don't think they would have. I don't think they would have voted against him. I think he would have gotten back in. What are some things that you think Trump was successful in doing that Biden needs to pick up and continue to do? For example, his hardline stance negotiating with China. We had major trade deficits with China. There are a lot of people who said, you know what, Trump was on point with that, or saying, hey, we're not going to foot 80% of the bill for the World Health Organization. No, the rest of y'all, you need to put in your money, and y'all need to pay for this as well. What do you think, and what do you say about those things that arguably the president did a good job on? Do you think Trump? Do you think Biden should continue that kind of position? And I'm not talking about. There was a lot of criticism on how he did it, so I'm not talking about how he did it. I'm talking about what he did.
Okay, I agree. He did some things right. I agree with China, his position on China. I don't believe he should be buddy-buddy with North Korea and Russia. So he did some things right, and that Biden should do. He criticized our allies in Europe. When we were providing the military troops and the expenses, they had to do their part. So he was right in that his approach that was wrong. So Biden can say behind the scenes, be the politician he is, hey, he was right about this. Let's negotiate behind the scenes and get this done, because he did have a good point. Because Biden's enough of a politician to be two things at once. To say we need to clean up the mess that Trump did. At the same time, we're going to keep a few things. And by saying we're going to keep a few things and giving Trump credit, Trump doesn't give anybody credit.
No, absolutely.
Trump's about Trump.
Yeah.
And now, I do think, going back to African Americans, I do think there's a golden opportunity to bring up, in a rational manner, reparations. It's a perfect time to bring it up. Where no one gets crazy about it, no one says, for my check. No. Let's do it rationally, because I will say this. We're talking about foreign policy. How come we have money to give to all over the world? Everybody has, we give them money. How about, let's start, what's the expression? Charity starts at home. It is not charity when we talk about reparations. We're talking paying a debt that has been long overdue. And it's time to think about it and to do something about it. So yes, first thing is the virus, coronavirus, that helped Biden get into office. But the first thing that got Biden into office was the African Americans. We all of us started paying attention to him. I voted for Harris, as you know, I already said that. But where Biden got finally national attention from the media was when he won his first primary in South Carolina, thanks 100% to the African American community. Thank you.
All right, Roberto, thank you so much. Listen, I've got to get out of here and make way for truth. Let me just say, as we close out Georgia's the debate going on with the senators is on now, and it's interesting because the incumbent Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler, who's had some stuff following her, it seems like her strategy is simply to paint Dr. Raphael Warnock as she continues to say a radical liberal. And those are dog whistle terms, right? Those are terms that when you use them, cause people to sit up. She's not talking about his character. She's not even talking about his policies or his beliefs. And many of the things that she has thrown out against him, he has been vociferous in fighting. He has been denying. He has shown proof that she is not telling the truth. What's interesting is Dr. Warnock asked her a question and said, hey, do you believe that President Trump lost Georgia? Do you believe he lost the election? And she refuses to answer that question directly. She keeps on talking about how, it's your right to do everything that you can to use the law if you believe that an injustice has been committed. And so, it's interesting. Tonight on Truth, V. Michael McKay, David Goldstein, and Asia will be playing new holiday music throughout their show. So you don't want to miss it. So if you're wondering, how can I start getting into that Christmas spirit? You can do that tonight with Truth. This is Dr. D.Z.Cofield signing off for Real World, Real Talk on your member-supported public radio station, your number one source for jazz, KTSU 90.9 on the FM dial, KTSUradio.com, and on all social media platforms. I do want to remind you, man, make sure you catch me tomorrow morning. Catch me on all of my Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can catch me anywhere. I'll be continuing our Christmas devotionals. We want to help you have a great and prosperous year. All right. Take care. God bless is my prayer. See you next week. Got some exciting things coming up as we close out the year. Peace.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Real
Take care, everybody.
Real Talk.
Appreciate you.